They say the dawn brings promise, but for me, that calm Saturday morning at exactly 8 a.m. was when my suburban paradise turned into a war zone. I'd barely finished my first cup of coffee, still clutching the half-packed mug, when I heard that insistent knock at my front door. I opened it wide, expecting a neighborly greeting or maybe a plate of cookies. Instead, two uniformed police officers stood on my porch, their cruisers out front with red and blue lights pulsing silently. Behind them, a woman in her late 40s, jet black hair pulled into a tight ponytail, stood rigid as a statue, arms folded like a fortress, and eyes that burned with contempt. Linda Marshall, HOA president, scoffing there he is the man I told you about, the one living here illegally. The taller officer shifted, his hand hovering near his belt, not ready to draw, but enough to make my heart thunder in my chest. The shorter one fixed me with a no-nonsense stare. Officer Reynolds, sir, we need to see proof of ownership. We've had complaints of unauthorized occupancy. My gaze dropped to the eviction notice she shoved into my hand. 30 days to vacate, signed by the Crestview Heights Homeowners Association. My blood ran cold. I stood there, stunned, coffee mug trembling in my palm. One. The reality check me name is Ethan Carter, age 27. And just 1 week ago I'd closed on my first home, an absolute delight of a place. Bought entirely with cash I'd scraped together over half a decade. No mortgage, no banks, no headaches. Just me, my 2-bedroom ranch, and a dream of quiet suburban bliss. But instead of carefree weekends stripping shag carpet and repainting mustard yellow kitchen cabinets, I was now facing an eviction threat from the town's self-appointed queen of control, Linda Marshall. The backstory: how I got here after college. I moved back in with my parents, working as a freelance graphic designer around the clock. I skipped vacations, ran a 10-year-old sedan, and saved every penny. When that Crestview Heights ranch dated paneling, shag carpet, and all hit the market, I pounced. The retired sellers wanted a quick, all-cash deal. I gave it to them, signed the deed, and walked away debt-free. Flashback visual: Ethan's cramped city apartment's living room, with a makeshift home office phone call. We accept your offer. Joyous fist pump as Ethan holds the title. Point 3. The first encounter with Linda Day when I'm moving in. I unloaded boxes from the van, soaked in sweat and excitement. Across the street, Linda Marshall watched with binoculars, silent, arms crossed, expression unreadable. As soon as I set foot on the porch, she marched over, clipboard in hand. Linda, overly sweet welcome to Crestview Heights. I'm Linda Marshall, HOA president. I'll need you to sign a membership form and review our covenants. I smiled politely, exhausted. Me thanks, but this property lies outside the HOA boundaries. Her smile froze. Linda ICO, I'm sure we'll iron out the details. We take our standards very seriously here. She turned on her heel and stalked away, phone still recording. 4. The harassment begins. He tried shrugging it off, focusing on renovations, removing 1970s wallpaper, placing avocado green countertops, planting a small vegetable garden. Then, 3 days in, I found my first HOA notice taped to the mailbox. Mailboxes must conform to Regulation X non-comply, and mailbox size detected. Reality check: my mailbox measured exactly per regulation. I double-checked the specs. Next, hedges exceed allowable height. I trimmed them that morning. Then, unauthorized exterior decorations. I had none. Car illegally parked in my own driveway. At board meetings, every question I raised was met with Linda's condescension. Linda, excuses don't trump our covenants. We have standards to uphold. Other board members nodded like frightened bobbleheads. Meanwhile, fines piled up. $50 here, $75 there, escalating every time I dared speak up. 5. The fake age restriction on evening. A thick envelope arrived. Notice of non-compliance: homeowners must be 50 or older. I read it twice. Crestview Heights, a retirement community now. I called my real estate lawyer. LAWYE are laughing. She's making it up. That's harassment, and forging HOA bylaws is fraud. Document everything. 6. Unauthorized inspection. 14 days in, Linda knocked, again accompanied by 2 board members. Clipboard raised. She announced a property inspection. I blocked the doorway. Me, you need a warrant or written permission. Linda, as president, I have authority. I pulled out my phone. Me, this conversation is recorded. Show me the bylaw allowing this. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. She stormed off. Point 7. The forged eviction notice. That evening, taped to my front door, a county eviction notice with forged county seal. Signed as a deputy clerk. My stomach dropped. I called the county clerk. Clerk, we never issued that. Reported to the DA. I installed security cameras and began logging every interaction. 8. Finally, legal action drafted an emergency motion to halt foreclosure proceedings and filed suit against both the HOA and Linda personally. Causes of action: abuse of process, fraud, intentionally infliction of emotional distress, PA violations, saw actual, and punitive damages, plus attorney's fees at my usual hourly rate. 9. Service of processually. One morning, a process server appeared at Linda's home, papers in hand. She shrieked, "Linda, this is harassment. I'll have your license revoked." The server calmly replied, "Server, you are served," and walked away. Linda stood frozen, face turning every shade of red. 10. Preliminary hearing. 2 weeks later, we met in Judge Morrison's courtroom. Linda arrived with HOA counsel Peterson, who looked green. I presented procedural violations. Number 9-a-day delinquency notice, no payment plan offered, board resolution lacked required 5. Signature Judge Morrison quashed the foreclosure, granted expedited discovery, and scheduled a full hearing. 11. Discovery exposes the schematic. Discovery revealed unilateral fee hikes, targeted fines against the center secret compliance grading spreadsheet, embezzled HOA funds till $30,000 used for personal expenses. He amended to add embezzlement and RICO charges. DA launched a criminal investigation. 12. Final hearing showdown. Word of the final hearing drew a packed courtroom. I laid out forged board minutes, retaliatory fine, record embezzlement ledgers, email chains, plotting homeowner purchase. Linda's attorney objected weakly. Judge Morrison overruled. Linda took the stand. Under cross, I revealed a $2,500 credit card charge to a Hawaiian resort. No HOA conference existed. Her denial crumbled under data. 13. Ruling and damage. Judge Morrison's verdict: foreclosure void. Malicious prosecution. Who had to pay $65,000 actual plus $100,000 punitive. Linda personally liable for $50. Linda removed from the board and barred for life. Members cheered quietly. 14. Criminal conviction. 2 weeks later, DA charged Linda with embezzlement, fraud, racketeering. At sentencing, judge 5 years prison. Full restitution, breach of fiduciary duty. Linda collapsed in sobs, repeating I was protecting standards. 15. Epilogue. Sanctuary rested back on my porch at sunset, coffee in hand. I surveyed Crestview Heights, a community reborn. My boxes unpacked at last. I knew this house was truly mine. The lights flickered and died across the street as Karen Whitaker stormed out of her house, her face twisted with fury. I sat on my porch sipping my morning coffee, while the gentle hum of my brand new off-grid wind turbine filled the air. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who had spent months trying to ban my wind turbine was now standing in her driveway, powerless in more ways than one. My name is Ethan Caldwell, and this is the story of how I turned the tables on the most insufferable HOA president in Willow Creek Meadows. It all started 10 months ago when I decided to install a small wind turbine in my backyard. As a graphic designer running a home studio, I was tired of watching my electricity bills spiral out of control. Between running multiple computers, monitors, and a small server for my freelance business, my energy costs were eating into my profits. Plus, I've always been passionate about sustainability. Reducing my carbon footprint felt like a no-brainer. After months of research, I settled on a sleek, vertical axis wind turbine. It was quiet, efficient, and designed to blend into my backyard without looking like an industrial eyesore. I pulled all the necessary permits from the city, hired a licensed contractor, and even consulted an engineer to ensure the turbine met safety standards. The installation was flawless. Within a week, my turbine was spinning gracefully, generating clean energy and cutting my reliance on the grid. Watching my electric meter slow to a crawl was exhilarating. I felt like I was taking control of my future while doing my part for the planet. Then came the knock on my door. Karen Whitaker, the HOA president, stood on my porch, clutching a clipboard like it was a weapon. Her eyes narrowed as she informed me, in a tone dripping with condescension, that my wind turbine was a visual nuisance and violated Willow Creek Meadows aesthetic standards. She demanded its immediate removal, citing subsection 9.3 of the HOA's architectural guidelines. I tried to explain that I'd followed all city regulations and that state law protected my right to install renewable energy systems. Karen wasn't having it. She cut me off, her voice sharp as she lectured me about upholding the neighborhood's prestige. I was stunned. I'd done everything by the book, yet here she was, acting like I'd built a junkyard in my backyard. Asterisk. Over the next few weeks, Karen launched a relentless campaign against my turbine. Violation notices started arriving daily, each with a $75 fine for unauthorized structural modifications. She called emergency home meetings, where she ranted about property values and how my hippie contraption was ruining the neighborhood's charm. She even roped into other board members, Harold Jenkins and Susan Platt, to back her crusade. The fines piled up, $150 for excessive noise despite my turbine being virtually silent, $200 for unapproved exterior alterations, and $300 for disrupting the neighborhood's harmony. It was ridiculous. I'd submitted my turbine plans to the HOA months earlier, but Karen claimed they were lost in the system. Things took a darker turn when I came home one afternoon to find a stranger in my backyard, taking photos of my turbine. Karen had hired an inspector without my consent, claiming the HOA had the right to verify compliance. I called the police, who escorted the inspector off my property for trespassing. The situation escalated further when I received a certified letter from the HOA's attorney, threatening legal action if I didn't remove the turbine within 30 days. The letter listed a litany of supposed violations, claiming my turbine was causing irreparable harm to the community's aesthetic integrity. It was clear this wasn't just about rules. Karen had made it personal. I wasn't about to back down. I hired an attorney, Rachel Nguyen, who specialized in renewable energy law. She reviewed the HOA's letter and called it a masterclass in baseless intimidation. Together, we filed a complaint with the state's Renewable Energy Board and began documenting every interaction. And with Karen and the HOA, the real turning point came when I noticed my application for net metering with the utility company was stalled. Net metering would have allowed me to sell excess power back to the grid, but the process was inexplicably delayed. After some digging, I discovered that Karen's cousin, a mid-level manager at the utility company, had been meddling with my application. That was the final straw. If Karen wanted to play dirty, I was ready to take things to the next level. I invested in a battery storage system and a backup generator, creating a setup that could power my entire house off-grid indefinitely. My contractor installed a transfer switch, allowing me to disconnect from the grid entirely. It wasn't cheap, $15,000 out of pocket, but the thought of being free from Karen's reach made it worth every cent. The day I flipped that switch and went off-grid was pure bliss. No more utility bills, no more reliance on a system Karen thought she could control. I was free, but the real game changer came when I started researching property records. I discovered that a utility pole serving Karen's house and for others in our cul-de-sac was located on a small corner of my property. Decades ago, there had been a handshake agreement allowing the utility company access, but nothing was legally binding. I consulted Rachel, who confirmed I could revoke access to my property, especially given the harassment I'd endured. I sent a formal letter to the utility company and the HOA, giving them 30 days to relocate the pole or face restricted access. The reaction was immediate. Karen called an emergency HOA meeting, her voice trembling as she accused me of blackmailing. The community, Harold and Susan, suddenly realizing their own homes were affected, begged Karen to back off. But she doubled down, threatening to sue me for obstructing public utilities. The next HOA meeting was chaos. The community center was packed, with neighbors spilling into the hallway. I arrived with Rachel, my contractor, and a representative from the state Renewable Energy Board. We presented our case, every permit, every state law protecting renewable energy rights, and a detailed record of Karen's harassment. The evidence was airtight. Karen tried to maintain control, slamming her gavel and demanding silence, but the room turned against her. Neighbors shared stories of her overreach fines for unapproved mailbox colors, demands to remove garden gnomes, even citations for improperly trimmed hedges. The tide had shifted. When the vote came, the whole board unanimously reversed all fines against me, issued a formal apology, and amended the guidelines to explicitly allow renewable energy systems. Karen abstained, her face red with humiliation, but Karen's troubles were far from over. The State Renewable Energy Board launched an investigation into her cousin's interference with my net metering application. Within weeks, he was suspended from his job pending a full review. Karen faced a recall election as HOA president and lost in a landslide to Maria Lopez, a local librarian who promised fair governance. As the results were announced, Karen stormed out of the meeting, shouting that we'd destroy the neighborhood's value. The final blow came when the utility company billed Karen $22.00 for temporary power lines to her home, with monthly fees of $600 until the pole could be relocated, a process estimated to take 6 months and cost $120. The fallout didn't stop there. The investigation uncovered that Karen's cousin had delayed permits for 9 other homeowners seeking renewable energy installations, all linked to complaints from Karen about neighborhood aesthetics. The state referred the case to the district attorney, who filed charges for abuse of position and conspiracy to violate energy laws. Local news ran the story, with headlines like HOA president and utility insider face charges in renewable energy scandal. I watched from my turbine-powered home as reporters swarmed Karen's house. She tried to dodge them, yelling from her porch, but her outburst only fueled the coverage. Her employer, a luxury home builder, fired her days later, citing reputational damage. Karen and her cousin faced mounting legal bills. Rumors put their combined costs at over $80,000. A for sale sign appeared in her yard, though it was quickly taken down. The trial was quick. Emails between Karen and her cousin plotting to stop the echo invasion sealed their fate. The jury convicted them in under 3 hours. Karen's cousin got 2 years in prison and a $60,000 fine. Karen received 18 months of probation for 100 hours of community service, ironically, at a renewable energy nonprofit, and a $30,000 fine. As the judge read the verdict, Karen broke down, sobbing as her attorney tried to console her. I sat back, my turbine spinning quietly, knowing I'd not only won, but had exposed a petty tyrant for who she was.